Hello everyone. So for those of you that haven't met me before, my name is Sylvie Brucine and I'm the Assistant Curator at the Holborn Museum. I'm here to talk to you today about precious and rare Islamic metalwork from the Courtauld. And I'm very sorry that we can't do this session in person for obvious reasons, but I hope that I will see you all very soon when the museum reopens on the 17th of May. So I'm just going to share my screen with you now. So Precious and Rare Islamic Metalwork from the Courtauld. This is an exhibition that's on in our ballroom from the 17th of May through to Sunday the 1st of August. This is a touring show that was organised by the Courtauld in London in partnership with the Specialist Subject Network for Islamic Art and Material Culture, which is based at Birmingham Museums. The tour started in September 2019 at the Royal Cornwall Museum in Truro, before heading to Cartwright Hall Art Gallery in Bradford, and then on to the History of Science Museum in Oxford, where unfortunately I think it was only open for a couple of days before it had to close due to the second national lockdown. And so the Holborn Museum is the final venue on this touring exhibition. We were meant to be the third venue, with the show opening last summer alongside Canaletto in the Worth, but of course that didn't happen. And instead it got moved to this summer so it could continue to be displayed alongside the Canaletto show. And it also got moved to the ballroom, where it complements the Holborn's collection of decorative arts. The show itself comprises 10 highlights from the Courtauld's collection of Islamic metalwork, and these objects date from the 13th to the 16th centuries and come from a range of cultures from across the Middle East and the Islamic Mediterranean, including including present-day Iraq, Iran, Syria, Egypt, and Turkey. The exhibition is split into three themes that were developed by the Courtauld and the Subject Specialist Network for Islamic Art and Material Culture. So these three themes are calligraphic decoration, the human figure in Islamic art, and a taste for Islamic art in Europe. This is the first exhibition that will be shown in the ballroom, first exhibition in a long time, that isn't on the large ballroom table. So the large ballroom table has now, it was dismantled at the end of last year. And this exhibition is instead, it's spread across 6 different cases that's spread across the entire of the ballroom. So the first 2 cases in this display are dedicated to calligraphic decoration. Calligraphy, of course, being the art of writing. So calligraphy is of the utmost importance in Islamic art and is strongly tied to the Quran and the desire to adorn the word of God. Copying the Quran is considered an act of piety, and there are many calligraphy treatises and a large body of historical sayings that emphasize the importance of beautiful handwriting and how it brings out the wisdom of the word and the inner virtue of the writer. So there's these different levels of communication within calligraphy, and the meaning of the text is expressed both through the words and in the aesthetic and ornamental aspects of the writing. There are many different styles of Islamic calligraphy that have developed since the birth of Islam. So, for example, the Kufic script, which was developed in the 7th century and played an essential role in documenting the Quran. It's one of the oldest Arabic scripts that persisted in common use until the 13th century, and it has these sort of very specific visual characteristics, including angular shapes and long vertical lines that made it suitable for architecture and written Islamic titles. There's also the Thulu script, which was developed in the 11th century, and this is a cursive script that is known for its readability. And then there's the Nashq script, which was developed around the same time, and this was traditionally used for copying the Quran, as well as other long texts and inscriptions. So calligraphy has its roots in copying the Quran, but it's not just on pen and paper, or indeed in religious settings, that we find calligraphic decoration. Instead, the importance of calligraphy in Islam has meant it's widely used in all art forms, both secular and religious, and in many different materials, including many of the metalware objects that are on display in the ballroom. So on the left-hand side, one of the first objects that visitors will see, and it's in a case, its own sort of dedicated case, is this large bowl, which dates to the early 14th century. And it comes from the Mamluk Sultanate, which was the ruling power in Egypt and Syria between 1250 and 1517. So the surrounding inscription is punctuated by roundels and inlaid with silver, though as you can see from this image, it suffered many losses throughout the years. The inscription, which you can read on the left of your screen there, suggests it was made for an officer of the Almanik al-Nazir, which was an honorific title used by a number of Mamluk sultans that means the king, the victor. The text is written in Thulu script, which, as I've mentioned, is the more readable cursive script that's characterized by bold and elegant shapes. And the calligraphy here, it's bold and it's monumental, and it's contrasts to has a contrasting design to the background, which is this sort of a ground of delicate foliage. And that kind of contrasting design is a distinctive style that developed in Egypt during the early Mamluk period, so kind of between 1250 and 1350. Mamluk bowls of this deep round bottom shape are believed to have been used for holding water. And there are some similar examples, such as one that's in the British Museum, which has an engraving of fish in the interior on the base. Following the large bowl, we have this smaller, later version of a similar type of bowl. This is also from the Mamluk Sultanate, and this dates to the late 15th, early 16th century. The ornamentation on this bowl is divided into 3 bands, and the inscription runs across the top band and is punctuated by roundels. The inscription itself is very playful. It invites the viewer to contemplate its beauty and its meaning. But it's very hard to read this inscription because as you can see, it's lost all of its original silver inlay. So the inscription would have originally have been in silver, which would have contrasted against the sort of the brass background there. So unlike the earlier larger bowl, this object doesn't have a dedication to a specific patron, which suggests that it may have been made for the open market. So the next theme is the human figure in Islamic art. So although the often cited opposition in Islam to the depiction of human and animal forms holds true for religious art and architecture, in the secular sphere, figural representations have flourished in nearly all Islamic cultures. The avoidance of figural representation in religious art stems from the belief that the creation of living beings is God's prerogative. The most emphatic prohibition comes from the Hadith, which is a collection of sayings of the Prophet Muhammad. Though it condemns idolatry, the Quran is less explicit in forbidding the depiction of living beings. It's worth saying that, as with many doctrines across many different religions, there are varying interpretations of these doctrines in Islam, which have led to different forms of opposition. But despite that sort of ebb and flow of ideology, the human figure has been a fundamental motif in secular Islamic art and is an essential tool for expressing the diverse cultures of the Islamic world. So one of the highlights of this exhibition is this incense burner, which is possibly the smallest surviving example of an Islamic spherical incense burner in existence. It dates to the late 13th century, and it's also from the Mamluk Sultanate, so it was thought to have been made in Syria. The object itself is made up of these 2 interlocking hemispheres, showing the sun surrounded by personifications of the moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Saturn, and Jupiter, who are holding their astronomical attributes. So in the center of this image, there is Saturn, who is holding an axe or a sickle. Inside the incense burner, the pierced globe would originally have been fitted with a small cup that would have been attached to concentric rings that rotated on pivots, and that would have kept the cup upright. And it's thought that this object may have been used, it may have been rolled between guests at different festive occasions and feasts. The cup itself would have held burning coal and perfume substances. And the size of this object, so it's only 5 centimeters in diameter, so it fits in the palm of your hand. And it's thought, it's possible that this object could also have been used as a hand warmer. And here's a better image of this this object. So this is the top of the incense burner, and it shows the sun surrounded by the different planets, and in the center of the sun you can see a face that's been engraved into the center there. So in the case alongside the incense burner is this late 13th century candlestick, which is from East Anatolia, so present-day Turkey. This candlestick, the body of the candlestick has 4 roundels which show enthronement scenes. So it shows figures, royal figures, drinking and eating, which suggests it was possibly used for, this candlestick would have been used during feasts. When you see this object up close and in person, you might notice the figures themselves have the heads have these sort of halos behind them. And this is thought to probably have been a tool for drawing attention to the head rather than holding any kind of form of religious significance. It also is possible that the halos denote the royal status of the figures, particularly the central figure, which is larger than the two figures either side of him, which signifies his importance. There is an inscription that runs along the top of the candlestick, which references Kasbeg, the chief of the commanders of the tent. And Kasbeg is thought to have been, well, it was a common title, a common name in medieval Anatolia. So the identity of this specific patron is unfortunately still is not known. So in the very center of the ballroom, in its own case, is the metalwork bag. So this will really be actually the very first object that visitors will see. And it's very much the highlight of the exhibition. It's an exceptionally rare piece. It's the only surviving object of its kind. So it was made in Mosul, so present-day northern Iraq, in the early 14th century. And recent research suggests it was owned by a noble lady of the Persian-Mongol court of the Ikhani dynasty, which was a branch of the vast Mongol Empire descended from Genghis Khan that stretched from present-day Turkey to Afghanistan. So on the front, back, and sides of the bag, there are these roundels that show musicians, revelers, and hunters. So there's one hunter spearing a lion and another one with a falcon perched on his left wrist. And these work function as a complete decorative program, kind of alongside the lid, which you see here in the top image, which shows a courtly banquet scene. And if you think that this object, so it would originally have had a strap around it, and so the wearer of this bag, with it kind of resting down and by its side, the lid is the part of the bag that the wearer would have seen. So it's the kind of the most significant part of this object. And actually the way that we've displayed the metalwork bag in the exhibition is that it's tilted forwards so that visitors can really look closely at this banquet scene. So The banquet scene is fascinating. So in the center of it, there are two figures who are larger than the sort of surrounding figures, the surrounding servants. So you've got the man on the left hand side, and then on the right hand side there's the woman, and she's quite difficult to read because the silver inlay from her face is unfortunately lost. But just to the right of the female figure, there is a servant who is, or an attendant who is wearing a bag which is very similar to this metalwork bag, which kind of creates this really fascinating possible meta narrative. And there is some thinking or some suggestion that possibly this banquet scene represents the scene in which this bag was given to its owner. So it's a really fascinating object. And yeah, I recommend when you come in to have a really good close look at the lid, which is just so detailed and beautiful. So the final theme in this exhibition is a taste for Islamic art in Europe. So one of the reasons we were really keen to display this exhibition alongside Canaletto is that there's a really important or really strong Venetian aspect to this display. So silver inlaid vessels from the Islamic Mediterranean were among the most sought after luxury objects in Renaissance Europe. And Venice played a pivotal role in maintaining close trade and diplomatic relations between East and West. So the city, for example, supplied the Near East with large quantities of copper and brass and received finished wares specifically made for export to Europe in return. The demand of these objects led to new styles emerging that would appeal to the tastes of European nobility and merchant classes. So one of the other highlights of the exhibition is this bowl-shaped box, which is the only object in this display to be signed by its maker, Mahmud al-Kurdi, who was active in the late 15th century in northwest Iran. It's the only known object of his to have a dual language inscription, which is both in Arabic and in Latin, which suggests it was intended for a European market. The inscription itself is on the rim of the bowl, so actually when the lid is on it, you can't see it. But in the display, this object is displayed with the lid off, so you can see the two inscriptions. We don't know the function of bowl-shaped boxes such as this, but that shape is found almost exclusively in Islamic metalware made for export to Europe. And there are various suggestions that have been put forward about what the contents of boxes like this would have been, including incense, cosmetics, spices, and sweetmeats. We have another example of a bowl-shaped box, so a similar shape to the object by Mahmud al-Kurdi. This dates to the late 15th, early 16th century from Syria, and it has on it 4 roundels, 2 of which contain European heraldic shields that have been left blank. So you can see one here on the left of the bowl. And it's thought to have been left blank so that the person purchasing this object would have put their own coat of arms, would have been able to have engraved their own coat of arms onto it. So another object in this theme, in this section of the exhibition, is this bucket, which is attributed to Zain al-Din, who was active in the late 15th century and was working either in northwest Iran, Turkey, Egypt, or Syria. The bucket isn't signed by Zain al-Din, but it is very close in form and design to a bucket that's in the V&A, which is signed by this maker. So the all-over ground of intricate arabesques is characteristic of the work of Zain al-Din. And it's also something that was found almost exclusively in inlaid metalwork objects that were made for export to Europe. So this object really reflects that a new style that was emerging across the Islamic Mediterranean in the late 15th century. This sort of new style that was made to appeal to European buyers. And if you're looking at this object and think that the handle looks quite odd, it's because that is a 19th century edition. So it would obviously have had an original handle, but that has been lost over the years and has been replaced by this handle in the 19th century. Such was the demand for Islamic inlaid wares that Venetian metalworkers began to create their own versions. And from that, a Europeanized Islamic style emerged, which is characterized by an all over very dense and minute pattern of foliage. So this pair of candlesticks are an example of objects made by Venetian metalworkers and reflects that kind of sort of hybridization of European and Islamic styles. So while a dense pattern of Islamic style foliage covers the entire surface, the format of these candlesticks is very much 16th century Venetian. These candlesticks were probably originally inlaid with silver, but the inlay has been removed and these candlesticks have since been regilded. And the final object in the show, and this is in a case on its own on the right-hand side of the ballroom, is this 16th century Venetian dish, which again kind of really exemplifies that hybridization of Islamic and European styles in Renaissance Venice. So the silver inlay cartouches set against an all-over ground of tiny arabesques were derived from Islamic designs, but hidden among the dense decoration are classical motifs, including grotesques, masks, and birds. Featured prominently at the center of this dish is a coat of arms of the Sagredo family of Venice, who were among the richest aristocratic families in the city. So those are the 10 objects that are on display in the ballroom for this exhibition. These works formed part of Thomas Gambier Parry's collection. So Thomas Gambier Parry was a collector in the mid-19th century. He was actually purchasing works around the same time as William Holbein, and they shared some similar interests in Italian maiolica and silverware. And Gambier Parry was also particularly interested in precious medieval and early Renaissance paintings. His family acquired their wealth as directors of the East India Trading Company, and he used his money to build his collection, as well as for charitable activities, European travel, and architectural patronage. He purchased the Islamic metalware on display during his European travels. So many of these objects were purchased in Venice, as well as Croatia, which is where he visited in 1858. He also purchased some of these objects in specialist antiquarian shops in London. He kept his collection at Hynham Court in Gloucestershire, which he bought in 1838, and we've got an image of the interior here, and you can see actually on the desk there is one of the Venetian candlesticks with a candle in it that I was speaking about a moment ago. So Gambier Parry's collection was bequeathed to the Courtauld by his grandson in 1966, and only a few pieces have been on loan since. So this exhibition really is quite a remarkable opportunity to see these objects outside of London. What I forgot to mention at the beginning of this talk is that one of the reason why we're able to, this touring exhibition has happened, is that the Courtauld are currently undergoing a major redevelopment, so none of their collection is on display. So this is really quite a rare opportunity to see this collection of Islamic metalware objects that really are some of the sort of most remarkable examples of their kind. So just to finish up with well, some practicalities. So Because this is a touring show developed by the Courtauld, we will be doing an evaluation at the end of it, and as part of that, we need to do a visitor survey. So I believe I've been speaking to Spencer about this, and I believe what we're going to do is ask the volunteer that's on shift in the ballroom to carry out a survey on an iPad using SurveyMonkey. And we're hoping to get around 4 surveys, visitor surveys done per shift. The survey will be 10 questions with I think there will all be multiple choice, so mostly there'll be yes or no answers, and it's the type of questions such as have you visited the Holborn before, and did you visit the Holborn specifically to see this exhibition? Photography without flash and also not using a tripod is allowed. And the other thing to note is that we ask that the volunteers on shift in the ballroom don't alter the blinds. So we have very specific light levels that we need to maintain for these objects. And we're kind of working out exactly which blinds we can have up and yes, which blinds we'll have up, and how that might change over the coming months as we sort of move closer and move more into summer. So we ask that the blinds aren't altered during the daytime. There are some events and activities that are linked to that accompany this exhibition. So on Thursday, the 27th of May at 7 p.m, there will be a free event, a free talk that will go be on Zoom. And this is with Professor Susan Babai, who is the Professor in the Arts of Iran and Islam at the Courtauld. We will also, in June, there will be a calligraphy workshop. I think the date and the details of this, whether it will be an in-person or a Zoom event, are to be confirmed, but keep an eye out for that. And also on Friday, on Friday afternoons in June, and also on Friday the 16th of July, the times of which are to be confirmed. Volunteer, so Jackie Brown and Zanab Al-Sad have developed some 10-minute gallery talks. They've developed these over lockdown, and these talks will focus on Arabic calligraphy and the different scripts. They've also created an information board that will accompany their 10-minute talks. So these will be taking place in the ballroom, and there will be a maximum audience of 10 visitors, which this is to, of course, comply with social distancing restrictions. And just to finish up, I've got a list here of some resources in case you would like to find out more about these objects and about Islamic metalware more generally. So there is, for example, a recording of an online symposium that took place in November last year, which was organised by the Courtauld, and it looks at the history of Islamic metalware, but it also there was a panel discussion about this specific touring exhibition and how each venue has interpreted and adapted, and how they have hosted this touring exhibition. There is also an online exhibition which is at the History of Science Museum, which was the third venue to show this touring show, and they have a fantastic online exhibition which sort of delves deeper into some of these objects and some of the themes, and they've got these sort of fantastic presentations and videos, so that's really worth having a look at. There's an online talk on YouTube by Professor Susan Babai on sensory experience in Islamic arts. So that was a talk that she did to for Cartwright Hall Art Gallery when they were showing the this exhibition back last year. And then there is also the Islamic Art and Material Culture Subject Specialist Network. There's their website where they have a whole list of resources, videos and different material where you can find out more about Islamic art more generally, and also more specifically Islamic metalwork. So finally, here is my email address. Obviously, because this is a recording on Zoom, I'm not able to take answer any questions that you might have, but do feel free to either email me or if you see me in the museum, come and say hello, and feel free to ask me any questions at that point. So I just wanted to end by saying thank you so much for listening to this recording and for volunteering at the Holborn, and I hope that you enjoy this exhibition, and I hope to see you all soon. So I'll say goodbye for now.